The clock is now running on the Playbook podcast, the podcast where you take a deeper dive into the game of business, leadership, teamwork, character, the things that drive your motivation and build dedication. When you get a good look at the game plan of great business leaders, you start to formulate your own playbook and your own rise to the top. Make your next play your best play. And now, here are today's game captains, Glenn Amorell and Andy Phillips. Let's go!
Welcome back to the Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Andy Phillips. Joining me, as always, is my co-host, Glenn Amorell. Glenn, how you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good, knocking the rust off after a summer off, right?
That's right. Yes, it feels like it's been such a crazy time period for various reasons for both of us. So it's nice to be able to get this one on the books, and I'm going to let you bring in our guest.
All right. Well, we have a gentleman today who is like a Hall of Famer of the sprinkler industry. He's a two-time award winner from the National Fire Sprinkler Association. He's also won the Parmalee Award from the American Fire Sprinkler Association. So there's only 3 people that have ever done that. That's kind of like winning the Heisman and being in the Hall of Fame. So that's tremendous. Buck Buchanan is our guest today.
Good afternoon.
So welcome,
gentlemen.
Buck.
Hey there.
We appreciate you joining us. Glenn, I don't know if you're ready to ask one, but I'm ready. I want to kick this one off.
Whenever. I'm ready.
Buck, why sprinklers? There has to be a why that goes all the way back to, I believe, 1966. There has to be a why. So what was your reasoning for going down that path?
Birth. I was born into it. My father and ultimately my 2 partners, father, worked for a company called Automatic Sprinkler Corporation of America, based in Youngstown, Ohio. And at the time, there were really only 2 sprinkler companies in the United States. And each of them was an officer in that company. And so we were sort of brought up caddying for our fathers on Saturday mornings for Mrs. Wagner's pie and a chocolate yoo-hoo, and learning the basics of what fire sprinklers do.
Well, that's awesome. Now, as you know, we're in the risk management industry. And one of the things I noticed, doing a little bit of research is that that when you build a new home, it's roughly 1% to 2% of the total cost would be for sprinklers. Why aren't more builders putting sprinklers in homes?
It's a question that everybody in our industry has been asking for a very long time. The number is probably closer to 1% for new construction. So you're looking at a number that's probably less than the carpeting pad, certainly less than the granite that goes in the kitchen. If you're looking to retrofit an existing home, it can be a little more expensive, obviously, and a little more challenging to deal with an existing structure. But most of the opposition, I think, comes from traditional home builders are opposed to anything that adds cost to a home.
Right.
I think their analytics are that for every so many thousands of dollars that are spent on a home, it takes a certain number of people out of that market. So it's simply not been something that they have been an advocate for. And the National Association of Home Builders, frankly, has opposed anything and everything, including smoke detectors. Of course, once they were accepted into the code, they joined hands and said they're a good thing. But that's the way, sometimes that's the way legislation works.
Yeah, right.
For sure. Talk to us about the changes that you've seen in your career over the time in the sprinkler world. Talk about, how technology has changed what you guys look at and what you got, the product you can produce. Just being in the business as long as you have, I know there's been so many ebbs and flows of it. So just talk to us about maybe some of the major changes, how you guys were able to adapt, because adapting is such a huge process for anyone in any business.
Well, actually, a lot of it started with your industry, the insurance industry. When I first entered into the business, most sprinkler systems were sold because of the insurance companies. No other reason. Over a period of time, the fire service and legislation became very active in promoting sprinklers because of the success stories. But it started in the beginning where building owners, I think the Parmalee, which was the award that Glenn referenced, that was a gentleman who had a piano factory and was looking to save money on his insurance, and he created his own homemade sprinkler system. So if I think of landmark events that took place, probably back in 1980, the MGM fire that a lot of people heard about, killed about 80 people, injured over 600. And I'll just move aside a little bit on that, because one of the things when there's a major fire, we all hear about it on the news, sometimes for a couple of days, most frequently only for 1 or 2 days. But we don't think about the after effects, the 600 people that were injured, that have been scarred for life, that were normal one day, and then unfortunately become challenged to live a normal life after that. And the fire service that has to go into these fights. The MGM, the estimate to have sprinkled that property when it was built was a $192,000. One of our contractors quoted the job. They thought it was too much money. They ended up losing $1 billion.
Oh my gosh.
400 million in lawsuits. The disruption to their business, the 8 months it took them to rebuild, and then ultimately they ended up having to sell the business because the name MGM had a negative connotation in Las Vegas. Where that impacted our business is an individual by the name of Sonny Scarf, who was in charge of fire safety for the Marriott, which at the time only had, I think, 12 properties, to give you a little perspective. He said, that's not going to happen in one of our properties. And he was the first one to go out and indicate that all Marriott properties were going to be sprinklered. And that put pressure on Hilton to follow suit. And as the Marriott continued to grow and acquire other hotels throughout the world, they protected every one of them. And some of the statistics that are pretty amazing is Sonny used to share with us, they had a fire in a Marriott property every single day somewhere. Many of them were actually started by employees looking to become heroes, but with the advent of fire sprinklers that put them out and cameras, we don't hear about those fires. They're extinguished by one sprinkler, which is another statistic that maybe we'll get into. But unlike what you see in Hollywood, over 99% of the fires that are extinguished out there are by one sprinkler. So I'd say that MGM initiated hotels being protected, motels, public areas for gatherings. And so then the necessary logic is why not sprinkler properties where everything we own and cherish are in our homes, our families, and everything we've ever been able to save over a period of years. So our company developed the first attractive residential sprinkler, and was responsible for an awful lot of innovations that made it far more reasonable by making sprinklers a lot faster. We were able to actually develop a CPVC, a plastic pipe, so that saved money. You didn't have to go with copper or steel. We also developed sprinklers that had larger areas of coverage. Traditionally, 144 square feet was the amount of space for a sprinkler head. So if you have a room 12 by 12, one sprinkler is fine. But do the math. If the room is 12'1" by 12'1", how many sprinklers do you need? Quickly now. Right, 4. Because you have to be a certain distance off every wall. So we developed heads that could cover 400 square feet, made sprinkler protection more affordable. And because we were innovative, on the cutting edge, people wanted a part of us. So we started our company in 1975. We had to do about $60,000 a month to break even. And when we were acquired in a somewhat hostile takeover by Tyco in 1999, we were doing about 22 million a month. So it was a good success story, but we're still advocates of getting sprinklers in homes where people live and play.
That's fantastic. Now, I noticed, there's a lot of myths that I was surprised about the sprinkler industry, like, and you kind of hit on one where if there's, first off, it's not, smoke doesn't set it off. Is that correct?
You're correct.
It's heat, and they don't all go off in a whole building all at once.
Again, typically one sprinkler.
Is there any other myths that you'd like to lay to rest about the sprinkler industry and sprinklers themselves?
Well, I think some of the concerns that home builders and maybe potential homeowners have is, leakage. But again, your sprinkler system is just as stable as your plumbing system, and your plumbing system have a lot of moving parts that get used on a daily basis, where the sprinkler system is sort of like having a fireman live in your house 24 hours a day, and he's just on call for you. So that would be another myth. And if there was a sprinkler activation because of a fire, so average sprinkler in a home puts off about 18 gallons per minute. And a fireman's hose, particularly if they only come in with one, is about 200 gallons per minute. And they'll aim that hose at everything that seems to move.
Right. I understand now.
All right. With that, we are on to our halftime. So the way we do halftime, Buck, is Glenn and myself each get to ask you one question not related to sprinklers or not related to your career. So just a way for our audience to kind of peel back the curtain a little bit on you. I'm going to go first. My question is this. I see the baseball picture behind you. I want to know, based off baseball, your favorite team first, but then your favorite player of all time, and have you seen them or did you get to see them in person?
My favorite player of all time is Mickey Mantle.
Is that why you have the 7 pillow?
Number 7, yes. Oh, yes. Number 7 pillow. I have 7 children. I have 7 in every one of my passwords if anybody wants to try to break into my internet connection. And my favorite team at the time would have been the old Yankees back in that day. But now my favorite teams would be the Wildcats, both Kentucky and Villanova for college basketball.
Okay. That's great. Yeah, I'll say, well, as soon as you said Mickey Mantle, that pillow started jumping out to me.
Now you're also a music enthusiast.
I am.
What's your favorite band that you've seen live?
Again, I'm going to probably throw 2 bands out there. The Moody Blues and Fleetwood Mac would probably be my 2 favorites. And my favorite singer-songwriter would be Bob Dylan.
Excellent. Very
Fantastic.
good.
Well, hey, let's move on to the second half here. We got, say 8 to 10 minutes. Question for you I have is, how much testing goes into your equipment and what you guys are going to be installing, the sprinklers? How much testing goes into? Because you think about, listen, if I install a fence in my backyard, you think about the risks that comes with that. It falls over, pain in the butt for me to put it back up, but it doesn't ruin a life. I couldn't imagine the pressure your company has to create a product that is there to save. So just talk to me about the testing that goes through until the company kind of check marks like, hey, this thing can be approved to now go out and this thing can prove to be sold.
Andy, it's a wonderful question. And it's the reason why there are only 5 of us in the United States that are still in the business, because every product test that we develop has to go through underwriters' laboratories and factory mutual insurance for extensive testing. And most sprinkler products would cost somewhere between $200,000 and $1 million for testing. And there's a series of tests, and you get one setback, even one that's just an oven test where you've passed every physical test, and then it's just got to sit there and undergo a time test. It's very, very expensive. So most of the changes that have taken place in the industry were through acquisitions as opposed to startups. It would be almost cost preventive to try to do a startup. In 2 of our years with Central Sprinkler, we were Underwriters Laboratories' largest customer in the United States total, including being ahead of General Electric. So it's very expensive, but it can be very rewarding.
Well, that's great. Now, Andy and I work with businesses. So if you were to give some good nuggets, some good tips for commercial property owners on some fire safety. I know I've gotten a couple nuggets, like, I don't leave my batteries plugged in anymore and things like that. But what advice would you offer to commercial property owners?
Well, the first thing I would do is I would tell them, make sure they look into sprinklering their property.
Mm-hmm.
And then the occupants of that building, as well as anybody that comes and visits that building. This is probably not so much for the building owners, because if they sprinkler it, they don't have to worry about it. But for your listeners, any building that they go into, they need to make sure that there's an exit other than the one that they came in. Because you mentioned earlier that you were at a concert last night. Typically, when you go into these halls, you try to come out of in the same place that you came in, and that can be catastrophic if there's a fire and everybody's trying to rush to get out of the building. So the other advice I would have is check with your insurance company, because a lot of properties will have a payback if they sprinkler their property in as short a period as 5 years, but somewhere between 5 and 10 years. And in today's new tax advantaged world, you can perhaps 179 your sprinkler system and do an accelerated depreciation over 1 year.
Very interesting.
So, Buck, what do you think is next in this industry? Is there an idea you have? Is there a trend you see? What do you picture being the next big thing? Is there anything like that?
Everybody's looking for that in the next big thing. And very few people, even when it comes out, it's usually poo-pooed as not being possible. So almost every innovation that we had, it was too fast, it was too light, it was too small. And so for anybody who's an entrepreneur, just don't be discouraged by those people who don't have that product and are dragging their feet because they'd like to stay with today's technology. What is next is how buildings are being built. Now, because of the shortage of land, they're going higher and higher. And we're seeing a lot more of these big block, the Home Depots, who are the biggest ones I'm leaving out? They're building these huge warehouses and they want to go up, not down. So now we have to find the type of sprinkler system that will penetrate a fire plume on a very intense fire, where the sprinklers are going to be located significantly higher than they are in the traditional buildings.
Well, we see some of these Amazon plants that are getting
That's what I was thinking. How do I forget Amazon?
Yeah, I'll say some of those that are getting put up, they're massive.
Right.
Massive.
All protected though. They wouldn't dream of going into an unprotected property.
Yeah,
Right.
for sure.
All right. And so now, what's next? Are you able to actually retire from the sprinkler business and stay retired, or do you get pulled back in?
Finally, I retired 4 times. The fourth was the final. However, unfortunately, the young man whose company I ran and sold had an unexpected heart attack and died on his 46th birthday.
Oh, no.
So I found myself working another year dealing with risk management.
Okay.
Whenever there is a sprinkler activation, insurance companies would like to pay their claims, satisfy their policyholder, and subrogate against somebody. And that's
the language.
And most of the time, the sprinkler is not the cause of it. A lot of causes are damage that are done during the construction phase. So after 1 year of a little bit of risk management, I am now in my 2nd year of retirement, but my 1st year of real retirement, and I'm enjoying it.
Can you get an award for retirement?
There's a question I can't answer. I don't think so.
Right.
Maybe from my family.
Yeah, right.
Well,
they're like, really?
Yeah. Well, congratulations to you on that.
Thank you.
This gets us to our final question. We call our Hail Mary question, our best question. We like to ask everybody. You obviously have a wealth of knowledge and experience, but take yourself back to 18, 20-year-old, 22-year-old buck, what advice, knowing what you know now, would you give yourself back then?
I wasn't married yet.
That makes a difference.
Careful.
I would take the lyrics of a Stephen Kellogg song, not well known singer-songwriter, but a great one. And it's "Don't Be Too Hard on Yourself." I think we quite often establish demands on ourselves and in our children. And sometimes those expectations are unrealistic. And I've tried with raising 7 children to realize if they bring home a report card and they've got 1 C and a lot of A's, they're aware of that C. And so I don't even mention it, because it would be very unfortunate to disregard all the good things they've done. And I think that's where most of us are in our lives that are trying to lead a good life. So we just sometimes need to sit back and say, you did all right, man.
That's a great
Fantastic
quote, great lyric, great way to look at life. I love that. Well, with time being what it is, I'm going to say goodbye to you now, because Glenn's going to sign us off here, but I want to say I appreciate it. Congratulations again on I think you have more retirements than even Brett Favre. So that says something. So, but congratulations again, and we appreciate having you. So Glenn can close us out.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Well, I'd like to thank Buck Buchanan for joining the Playbook podcast. My name's Glenn Amaral.
I'm Andy Phillips.
Until next time, what's in your playbook?